Everybody, thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for subscribing. Thanks so much for sharing our videos. Another great video today. We have Anna Simmons here on the program. She's done many different things in her life, and she's still kicking butt. And she is 83 years old, but she is as sharp as a tack, way sharper than our president. That's
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 not much. That's not a compliment, Rod.
that's true. That's true. That's not a compliment. Well,
Sorry.
you could be president because you're sharper than the president. So, and you're older than the president too. So, anyways, enough of that age stuff. We'll move forward. But she has a lot of experience in governmental affairs. She does specialize in talking about Arab relationships. Has advised many politicians, many governmental organizations. The list goes on and on. This is not going to be the only time we're going to have her on because, as I stated, she's got so much knowledge in her brain, and we need to spread this out in quite a few episodes due to that. Anna Simmons, thanks so much for coming on. Greatly appreciate your time today.
Thank you. It's nice to be invited.
Well, it's nice to have you on because, like I said, you have so much going on. We're not going to finish it in just this one show. I want to talk a little bit about the issue, and because you do have a book out, who is the radical Islamist. Now, it seems like, and you can kind of push back on this because I'm sure you will. Obviously, 9/11 happened due to Al Qaeda, and we saw what happened due to the war in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq, the war in Libya, and obviously now we are dealing with Iran. And that has ruffled a lot of feathers in the Islamic world. And it's very much as far as in turmoil because we don't have strong leadership in the United States right now. So before we go into the book, can you talk a little bit of from 9/11 up until now, a very short synopsis of where we are with Muslim Arab relations between this country and the Muslim world?
Well, I'll tell you when it really just started was with the Afghanistan war, because it is the first time in the history of the Muslims that all the Muslims from all over the world came together to fight against a common cause, the Russians. And it's also a time when they called on America, because we were in a Cold War, to help them fight against Russia. And they have a quote that states, "The enemy of my enemy is my friend to get rid of my enemy, but they're still my enemy." And once the war was over, they turned on the United States, which is the one that had helped them. But you have to realize two things happened in that war. Number one, Al Qaeda was formed. It started from there. They used all the weapons we left in Afghanistan. And the second thing is it promoted radical Islamists because it proved to them that Allah was on their side because they beat the Russians. So they decided that now was the time for them to go after what Allah had told them to do, and that was to rid the world of all the evil. It's a battle between good and evil. And that's where it is. And the world for them, is divided into two. There's Dar al-Harb, which is the world of war or evil, which is anyone who is not under Sharia law, or the world Dar al-Islam, which is the land of Islam, which is any place that's under Sharia law.
Right.
So if you look at the world and you divide it up, United States is not under Sharia law. Europe is not under Sharia. Any place that is not under Sharia law is free ground for them to conquer.
But this is not all the Muslims, correct? That think
No,
like
as I
this.
said, it's a radical Islamist. But you
Okay.
have to realize if a global jihad, then
Right.
all Muslims, wherever they are in the world, have to join it.
Let's talk about the border issue. It's been very important through this administration. They're letting everybody in the kitchen sink over the border now. Estimation of 3 million just in the year 2023. We've heard a lot of people coming over the border. Some they've caught, some they haven't. Iranians, Afghanis, Pakistanis coming over the border. Again, some they have caught, some they have not. How big of a problem is this? And because I believe it's a huge problem, and it almost looks like what happened when we took our eye off the ball with 9/11. There was a lot of warnings by bin Laden. His assailants were coming in and out of the country, and everybody turned the blind eye because nothing had really went on like that ever in our country in general. Do you see something like that happening again due to the border issue or no?
Yes, because the border issue, part of the radical Islamist, oh, well, I was going to say part of their goal is migration. That's what Muhammad started for them. Migration, and it's called civilization jihad, where you go into your evil country and you infiltrate till you become powerful enough that you can take over.
Would you say that already happened in this country in some places like
Well, we
Dearborn,
have
Michigan?
cells all over the United States that are part of the terrorist. But you have to realize also gangs, M13s was part of Al Qaeda. They came in with Al Qaeda.
I thought M13 they were in
Salvador, El
Mexico.
Salvador's right. But you
Yeah.
have to realize
Okay.
that they would support the terrorist because the terrorist wanted to destroy America.
Okay. But I just want to go into this speaking about like a place like Dearborn, Michigan, which is
That's a
most
problem place for us because that's very Arab Islamic.
right.
It's a land of Islam.
And even in Minnesota, they have a pot near Minneapolis that is entangled with the Somalis.
Right. What you have to realize is that
Okay.
America has to be careful we do not do what Russia did. Well, I don't mean Russia, let's see, France and Germany, where they let them form, like we have in Michigan, a community, because that community now is Islam. And in France, and if you visit Paris, France, and there are caves there that are Islamic, it's the Islamic community. Do you know the police and none of the government in France are allowed to come in unless the imams allow them?
So is this the no-go zones? Is this what you're talking
Mm-hmm.
about?
Yep.
Okay.
And that's what they're trying to form in Michigan and several places. A good example of what's happened in the United States are our college campuses.
Yeah.
The college campuses are teaching what Islam believes. They're not teaching what we believe. Number one, because they constantly keep quoting that Israel is on occupied land. Well, that's what the Muslims believe because that was all once their land. And under Islamic law, once Islam is settled, then it's always their land and they have a right to go back and take it. So they're going back to take Israel. It's their land. Well, look
Yeah.
at the Ottoman Empire. What did the Ottoman Empire control? All the way over into Spain,
Yeah.
up into France, Austria. I mean, the Ottoman Empire was enormous. Many people do not realize that the Islamic Empire, Rob, was the largest and the longest ruling empire in the world from 632 to 1922 with the end of World War I. Because the
Right.
Ottoman Empire was an Islamic empire. The caliphs were the sultans.
So if these people, obviously, as you stated, there's already cells in the country, and these people are going to keep coming in, regardless if they're Islamist or, Chinese or, I mean, we're seeing everybody in the kitchen sink coming, and these are mostly men. There's some women and children coming in, but very few compared to years
War
ago.
age men. Yeah.
Yeah, it's mostly young men coming in. My fear is not just the Islamic issue, which we've been speaking about. It's also this issue with China, where we're seeing a lot of Chinese men come over. Why are they all coming over? Why are they mostly just men? What are they planning on doing? I see this as the end of the empire. This is like Rome falling. Do you agree with this, that we are on very unsturdy ground right now?
I think we're on very unsturdy grounds, and we have been since Obama sent all of his executive orders, putting Iran back in place, taking the Houthis off the terrorist list. Look at the condition between Iran and China.
Mhm.
Iran, China, Russia, and
Right. The
North Korea
BRICS.
are buddy buddies. So
Yeah.
why wouldn't China be coming into the United States to help the Muslims?
Well, also the Saudis are involved with that group too now. There's a lot of money flowing in that group, a lot of population there. And obviously, the group that we're involved with, which is mostly these European countries, I mean, their military is not, and even their wealth is not even close to the countries that you just named with Russia, China, and Saudi Arabia. I mean, just those three countries, not even putting in North Korea, because I mean, they're just mostly a nuclear threat. They don't really have as much money. But regardless of that, there's a lot of military power in that group. There is a lot of money in that group. Just putting on the blocks, just China and Saudi Arabia, not even to mention Russia.
Why is Saudi Arabia going to China now? Because they were buddy buddies with the United States under the Trump thing with the Abraham Accord, which Biden stopped, and then he tried to bring it back, which caused what we have now in Israel, because Iran went after them because Saudi Arabia was willing to come. Iran is a
Yes.
threat to the Arab countries also. You have to realize Iran is a threat to Saudi Arabia, UAE,
Right.
Jordan, Kuwait. So they have to be careful there. Iran is a very wild country. And for us to be giving them so much power and so much money is frightening.
Was Iran our fault though that we went into there in the late 70s, as far as 78 and 79, and overthrew the leadership there? Because that country before that was mostly, wearing Western clothing. They were
Under the Shah of
into,
Iran, when
yeah,
the
right.
Ayatollah Khomeini took over, and that was the radical Islamist. The Ayatollah Khomeini was the one who started the radical Islamist. He's the one that started the
Yeah.
suicide bombers.
But wouldn't you say
Hezbollah.
we were involved in pushing that over the top though?
I don't know so much as we were involved. That's when I was very active. And
Okay.
I don't think so, but I think it was more that we just didn't want to get involved because we thought it was a revolution within the country, like the Russian Revolution, the French Revolution, and it didn't happen that way. The Ayatollah was more powerful than anybody believed he was, and he was supported by the Muslim Brotherhood,
Which is
which is very
Egypt. And why
powerful in
is
the United
Egypt
States.
not taking in a lot of these refugees from from Palestine? They are
None of
not
the Arab
taking,
countries want the Palestinians. They're
you know,
radical, they fight, they destroy things. Think about the Palestine. When Palestinians needed to leave Israel, where did they go? They went to Jordan and Egypt. What did they do in both of those countries? If you remember, they had to throw them out. The King Hussein had to get Jordan and Israel to help get rid of them because they were destroying his country. Arafat was a horrible leader. He was Egyptian, but he was a
right.
radical. Then they went, if you remember, they went to Beirut. And what did they do in Beirut? They destroyed Beirut, and the government in Lebanon had to ask Syria, and Iran came to their rescue with Hezbollah to get rid of them. And that's when Arafat went to Tunisia. So nobody wants them because they have a reputation of not working, of not doing anything, and being terrible fighters.
Yeah. Well, what is next for the relationship? I mean, obviously, we do have a presidential election, at least for now. God knows what could
What's
happen
going to
between
happen?
now and in November. I mean, I'm not going to go into that because we'll end up getting censored. So I'll keep those opinions to myself. We'll talk about that off here like we did earlier. Regardless of that, we do have a presidential election. So we could have, Biden for another 4 years, Gavin Newsom, Michelle Obama. We could have Donald Trump or Nikki Haley. I mean, we have to say these things, they are factual. But regardless of who we have, what do you think is next for this relationship between the Muslim world and the United States?
I think it depends on who wins as to who is weak. And right now they see the Democrats as weak, so they'll support the Democrats. The Muslims, the Iranians, and the Russians and all. Why
But the
did they want
Muslims,
Biden to
but
win?
just to push back, in just to push back, the Muslims in this country are more so against the Democrats because Biden has not really gave into the ceasefire talks that a lot of the
That's now.
liberals
That's not before. That's
would.
something now. That's why he just went to Michigan to try to tell the Arabs and try to get them to vote for him because they've changed their vote. But before, the Muslims were for Biden and the Democrats.
Right, correct, yes.
So now they've turned on him because he's not doing what they want. But you have to realize all Muslims will pay for and help the Palestinians, but that does not mean they want them in their country.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They'll help them, they'll send money to help them, but they do not want them in their country. It's a shame, but they have that reputation over the years.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and it is a problem, and we need to make sure that we've let so many people in this country just the past 4 years, and it seems like since Obama, it just keeps going up and up as how many immigrants are coming into this country. I'm cool with letting people in, but you have to have people that are coming in to work, that have special skills, that can contribute to the economy. You can't just let all these people come in so they can go on the government dole. I mean, it's just a problem when we already have people in this country that are suffering with physical illnesses, with mental illnesses, with issues with jobs, the list goes on and on. We have to support the people here. We cannot, afford to bring more people in to support them when we can't even support our own country, not to mention the debt and the deficit that we have in this country, the interest that we have to pay China due to our insane spending going back to George W. Bush, to Obama, to Trump, and to Biden with this $1.9 trillion rescue plan in the CARES Act that went back to the COVID hysteria that went on here. So this has been, and I hate to rant and rave, but what's true is true, and I'm going to shut up and let you talk in just a second. What's happened from Bush with the wars, and now we have all the ways, again, to Obama, to Trump, to Biden with the Ukraine, and now we have to give money to Israel. I mean, when does it stop? When does it stop? When the whole country goes under? I mean, we have people all over the streets right now. I mean, it's crazy.
Have you ever read Saul Alinsky?
Yes. Yes,
Okay,
that goes.
if you follow his 8 points on how to turn a country to socialism and communism, and you look what's happened to us in the last 2.5 years, you can check them off. Why? I'm serious. I make my students do that. We discuss it.
Right.
I mean, that is scary that we are heading more toward, and that's what we're heading toward. We're helping the poor, taking away from the middle class, which is what Russia did. And what happened? There was no middle class in Russia.
Right.
You were either rich or you were poor. You had nothing.
Yeah. And it's truly sad. Some of the stuff I've seen in this country, we don't have to go down the checklist, but some of the stuff I've seen in this country the past 4 to 8 years has been really sick. And I remember, I'm only 34 years old. I remember growing up, grammar school, high school, college, there was none of this crap going on. And I'm not 90 or 100. I'm 34
Neither
years
am I.
old. I mean, come on, man. I mean, this is ridiculous. And anyways, it's we could go on and on. I do want to finish off the interview, and like I said, we're gonna have you on again. But I want to have you finish off, Anna, about the book and talk a little bit about the book. What made you want to write it, just so people can get a feeling for you?
Okay. Well, I've been working and studying and living within the Arab Islamic world for 29 years. And when I started out with this, everyone said, "Oh, you're a woman, you're never going to be able to do anything." And I decided to study Islam and Islamic law from the Imams and Islam. I did not want an American point of view. I wanted their point of view, their mindset, and their psychological mindset. So I studied under the Imams, both Shiite and Sunni. And through them, I became a stronger Christian. I realized I literally did not know my faith like some of these little 7 and 9-year-old kids did in the madrasas, knew their Islamic faith because it's drilled into them. And we do not understand the Bible. And I did not understand my Bible till I was forced to study the Quran. And I thought, well, that story's in the Bible. And then I started going back studying my faith. But I think our biggest problem is, and what I found was that Americans cannot get out of their concept of the American way of life, how everything is supposed to be democratic and such, and walk away from that and get into the mindset of someone who has never, ever had that in their background. They have no idea. Look what happened to Iraq. They had no idea how to run a court. They didn't know how to run their government because they had never, ever had the opportunity to do any of that. They've always been under the control of the imams or a caliph.
Well,
And so they've never thought for themselves. They do not understand democracy. There's no room for democracy in Islam.
wasn't Iraq a mistake due to the buffer zone between, we had with Iraq and Iran fighting each other? They didn't like each other. They had been fighting for years. And then you take out Saddam. Again, Saddam is not Jesus. He's not the greatest man in the world, but he did have control over that country. You go in, you take him out, and then you leave the doors open for American soldiers to get blown up. You leave the doors open for Iran to keep getting more and more control over the Middle East region. And that's personally what I believe. I think that Bush wanted to go in there because his daddy, had these death threats against him. Saddam was trying to kill his dad, and he wanted to finish Saddam off to
Well,
prove he was man.
Desert
But
Storm was done by the UN. It wasn't the United States, it was the UN. We were
yeah,
part of the
yeah, but
UN.
we
In the
have a lot
United
of control over the
Yeah, but
UN.
that we were
But
asked by the UN and the Arabs, Saudi, Kuwait, Jordan, and all of them, because you can't have 32 countries
but
fighting without having one in control. What was
yeah,
Eisenhower in World War II?
right. No, I hear
You
you.
had to, Evan. So
But
we were asked to be. We were part of the UN. We were under the UN control then, because he went after the oil in Kuwait, which controlled a lot of the world. And he was brutal when he went into Kuwait. I was there. He was brutal. I mean, he went
but
into the
yeah.
hospitals and they just butchered up. I mean, it was terrible.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying that this guy is Jesus Christ.
Oh, I know
Not
that,
even
but I'm
close.
just saying
I,
he was
you
not a Muslim. He was a Baath.
okay? And
And he
explain to
tried to
the
be a Muslim because he needed the Muslims to help him after the UN went after him, and he had 32 countries after him.
yeah,
32 out of those 32 countries, 10 were Muslims
yeah.
that fought against Saddam Hussein. There were
But
10 Muslim countries that joined us
yeah, but
to fight.
I'm going more into not George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush in 2003. That was a
Right.
different ball game from the '90 war.
He had a different mindset. I worked under George Bush, the Baba. He's called
Yeah,
in the Middle East Baba Bush, Father
right.
Bush.
Well, I'm talking about the son.
The son had so many ties with the Saudis and the Middle East and so
Right.
forth that he didn't want to cause any problems. You got that with Biden with Iran. He doesn't want to hurt Iran.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to
But
do anything that's going to upset Iran. So
but
you
you
don't want
agree with me though, just to backtrack. Iran and Iraq hated each other. They were warring for many, many years. Again, you take out Saddam, that country falls like it did. That country never again is going to be the same. And it's still not the same. It's still out of control, just like Libya with Obama. if we want to even go back into that, back into the Obama administration. But that's what I'm saying. So you go in and disrupt these countries, you create more terrorists when you go in there and break these countries down, such as what we did with Iraq and Libya with Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama.
Well, you have to realize, and this is where I have trouble with Americans. When we go in, like we did with Iraq and so forth, Americans think it's going to take 1 or 2 years and you should walk out. You can't walk out because those people do not know how to control it. We're still
Right.
in Germany. We were still in the Philippines. We're still in South Korea.
Yeah.
Do you know
I
what I mean?
agree.
The countries, it takes a long time and a different generation to get them to understand how to do things because they are so different from us that they do not understand it. And they've been told that we're the evil ones. So you have to get the next generation,
Right,
which
but
is why the Muslims kill babies because they're killing the next generation.
I guess what I was just saying is because those two countries hated each other. If Saddam was still in power, there would be that buffer zone.
Well, he invaded Iran all the time. Iraq hated
Right.
Iran, and he always kept invading them. And he used gas on them. He gassed a lot of Iranians.
But
He
that's
used
what I'm saying. Do you feel that if he was still in that country, again, this is all hypothetical, the
oh
guy is dead,
my.
that we wouldn't have as much problems with Iran if Saddam was still in power because you had the buffer zone.
I think he would have gone with the Iranians if it was a chance to take
Really?
over the Americans. He hated America. He hated England. He hated the British
Okay. I
because of
didn't know.
World War One and World War Two. He hated the Germans. He gassed his own people. He gassed the Kurds. He killed 5,000 Kurds using gas on them, but he was so stupid that his soldiers who used the gas did not realize that the air was coming to them, and he gassed a lot of his own people. I mean, he was just a very radical person. He killed the leader to become a leader. He assassinated a leader to become a leader. That's a biggie.
Yeah. No,
What does
I
that
hear.
tell you?
No, I
He
hear
tried
you.
to destroy Kuwait. He wanted to be the Muslim state. He wanted to be the Islamic Muslim state, which all Islams are trying to be, is
Yeah.
the Islamic state. They don't have a true Islamic state.
Right. All right. And it looks like we're about to run out of time in about 5 minutes. So I do want to finish off with this. And again, I do want to have you on again. Again, Ian Simmons. The book is Who is the Radical Islamist and Why? Just finishing off, I know you have a big talk on the 20th of February. If you want to just give the audience a little bit more information about this as we come to a close.
Okay, well, during the talk, I've been asked to discuss how Israel and that part of the world got to where it is today. And I start before World War One with the Ottoman Empire and how much control they had. And Israel property was Palestine. There was no Jordan, there was no Iraq, there was no Syria, and no Lebanon at that period of time. It was all Palestinian. It was
Yeah.
after World War One that the British and the French created Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, and Jordan, and the border lines between Saudi Arabia and Jordan. If you look at when those countries were formed, it was after World War One. So any
Yeah.
territory that belongs to them, they feel they have a right to take back. And what we're not realizing and what is not being taught in our colleges is that Israel went through the UN, and literally the UN voted and gave them that territory for Israel. They are not occupying the land, but according to the Muslims, that never happened. Israel is occupying their land, and that's what's being taught in our colleges. You have
Just
to realize when CARE took over our education, which is the seed of the Muslim
right.
Brotherhood, that's when I got bumped because I refused to accept what they wanted to teach our students, which was all Islam. And I said, no, I'm not teaching Islamic history. They need to know international history. And that's what they refused to have.
But when we talk about the UN, we usually think of these big countries. Obviously, in 1948, when Israel was created, it's a little bit different as far as power structure
There were
than it is
54
now.
countries in the UN.
Yeah, but most of the countries that have the power, we would say, is China. It's the
Not then,
G7.
though. China didn't have power
Not
then.
then. No, no, no. Correct. Like I stated, it's changed a lot now than it was at that time. But we do think of the G7 right now are the countries with the most power in general. That's why they're all meeting together to try to, run
But
the
the
world.
UN is made
But
up mostly of the second world countries. There's
yeah,
192 countries in the UN, and 68 of them are third world countries that never pay any dues into the UN.
but right, true. And
And
I'm not.
they vote just like everybody else.
Yeah, but if you're a big country, you can pretty much kind of
That
buy.
you may say that, but that doesn't work all the time. I know
That's
from
true.
working in it. I mean,
That's
people seem to assume that because they feel that's the American way, the democracy way. If you got money, you've got power. I would say these third world countries have more power because they stick together.
and
Thank
Simmons, and
you.
I do hope people go and get the book. You can get it on Amazon. Is there anywhere else people can get the
Barnes and
book?
Noble has it.
And Barnes and Nobles too. Yeah, we do. And the local bookstores, you can tell them, and I'm sure they'll order it.
Right.
We try to push people through there because we hope that we try to keep everything local. Again, who is the radical Islamist and
And
why?
why? Yeah.
And definitely get that book. So, Ian, besides there, any other website or any other where people
No,
can
I
find
have
it?
I lectured in 2007 at Oxford University in Oxford, England, and
Right.
they published my book on globalization and its effect on national security.
Right.
So that's
Okay.
another one that
Yeah.
I've done.
Go. Okay. Well,
And
we'll
I'm
look at.
working on my book to follow up on this one that I've just finished.
And what is that going to be?
Consequences of Denial.
And that is about the radical Islam also. Yes.
Yes, the consequences of denial of everything that's going on with your acting in denial, like it's not happening, like with the borders and all. What's
Yeah.
going to be the final effect? What's going to be the consequences? I feel that's important.
I
I think
agree.
one of the things I learned, you have to do the pros and the cons.
Yeah.
And, I don't think this administration looks at the cons. They're in more to causes. If I'll get the votes from you, I'll help you do this and put this in. But that's not looking at what happened down the line. I mean, look when they stopped the pipeline.
Yeah.
10,000 people lost their jobs, and we're in inflation now. And who are we
Yeah.
buying our oil and all from? Our enemies,
Yeah.
Russia and
No, it's
China.
it's
I
100%
mean,
true. And
yeah.
but I know this is about to end, so I do want to say goodbye
I'm
before we get
sorry.
cut off. And I will give you a call to